asati pratipadyate tato bandhum asach chaksu sarvanush yutam advayam. A liberated soul realizes the absolute personality of Godhead, who is transcendental and who is manifest as a reflection even in the false ego. Hmm. He is the support of the material cause, and he enters into everything. He is absolute, one without a second, and he is the eyes of the illusory energy. Purport by His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. A pure devotee can see the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything materially manifested. He is present there only as a reflection, but a pure devotee can realize that in the darkness of material illusion, the only light is the Supreme Lord, who is its support. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that the background of the material manifestation is Lord Krishna. And as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, Krishna is the cause of all causes. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that the Supreme Lord, by his partial or plenary expansion, is present not only within this universe and each and every universe, but in every atom, although he is one without a second. The word advayam, without a second, which is used in this verse, indicates that although the Supreme Personality Godhead is represented in everything, including the atoms, he is not divided. His presence is everything, and his presence in everything is explained in the next verse, text number 12. Yata jalasta abasa kshtala shatan avidrisyate swabhasena tata suryo jala stena divi stita. The presence of the Supreme Lord can be realized just as the sun is realized first as a reflection on water, and again as a second reflection on the wall of a room, although the sun itself is situated in the sky. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The example given herewith is perfect. The sun is situated in the sky, far, far away from the surface of the earth, but its reflection can be seen in a pot of water in the corner of a room. The room is dark, and the sun is far away in the sky, but the sun's reflection on the water illuminates the darkness of the room. A pure devotee can realize the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything by the reflection of his energy. In the Vishnu Purana, it is stated that as the presence of fire is understood by heat and light, so the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although one without a second, is perceived everywhere by the diffusion of its different energies. It is confirmed in the Ishopanishad that the presence of the Lord is perceived everywhere by the liberated soul, just as the sunshine and the reflection can be perceived everywhere, although the sun is situated far away from the surface of the globe. Okay, so let me read this verse again, Canto 3, chapter 27, text number 12. The presence of the Supreme Lord can be realized just as the sun is realized first as a reflection on water, and again as a second reflection on the wall of a room, although the sun itself is situated in the sky. Mhm. Okay. Um, okay. So therefore, Prabhupada says a pure devotee can realize the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything by the reflection of his energy. In the Vishnu Purana, it is stated that as the presence of fire is understood by heat and light, so the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although one without a second, is perceived everywhere by the diffusion of his different energies. It is confirmed in the Ishopanishad that the presence of the Lord is perceived everywhere by the liberated soul, just as the sunshine and the reflection can be perceived everywhere, although the sun is situated far away from the surface of the globe. Okay, so that means we can see Krishna in everything. And that's a good point. When you're capable of even, let's say, theoretically understand that Krishna is in everything and everywhere, well, that helps one become civilized. There's always going to be a witness, and there's always the presence of the Lord in everything and everywhere. Once a person understands that, then they give up all kinds of gross and subtle sense gratification. And they become, let's say, spiritually enlightened. Um, it's the light of knowledge, of chanting Hare Krishna and following the regulative principles of spiritual life. Therefore, it says, the presence of the Lord is perceived everywhere by the liberated soul, just as the sunshine and the reflection can be perceived everywhere, although the sun is situated far away from the surface of the globe. So, Krishna is everywhere, and the liberated soul can understand this. Once we understand that Krishna is everywhere in everyone's heart, and he knows everything that people are thinking and desiring and planning and so forth. Therefore, no one can get away with anything because there's always going to be a witness. The ultimate witness is Krishna. Okay. And here Prabhupada says a pure devotee can realize the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything by the reflection of his energy. In the Vishnu Purana, it is stated that as the presence of fire is understood by heat and light, so the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although one without a second, is perceived everywhere by the diffusion of his different energies. It is confirmed in the Ishopanishad that the presence of the Lord is perceived everywhere by the liberated soul, just as the sunshine and the reflection can be perceived everywhere, although the sun is situated far away from the surface of the globe. Okay, so Krishna is everywhere. And uh, actually, it says here that just as the sun is situated in the sky far away from the surface of the earth, but its reflection can be seen in a pot of water in the corner of a room. The room is dark and the sun is far away, in the sky, but the sun's reflection on the water illuminates the darkness of the room. A pure devotee can realize the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything by the reflection of his energy. In the Vishnu Purana, it is stated that as the presence of fire is understood by heat and light, so the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although one without a second, is perceived everywhere by the diffusion of his different energies. It is confirmed in the Ishopanishad that the presence of the Lord is perceived everywhere by the liberated soul, just as the sunshine and the reflection can be perceived everywhere, although the sun is situated far away from the surface of the globe, the earth globe. Okay, so this this concept that's being explained here is important if we uh, uh, want to have a spiritual life. One of the main things about spiritual life is we learn that God is present everywhere, or Krishna is present everywhere. And in this verse, it says, a pure devotee can realize the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything by the reflection of his energy. Well, what does that mean exactly? Well, in everything in nature, we can understand the presence of the Lord. Uh, for example, every day the sun rises and spreads its light everywhere. And then the sun, uh, let's say, sets and darkness comes. So if you think about it, the sun never really sets. It simply moves uh, uh, from one side of, let's see, I mean, we have limited vision. So therefore, it looks like the sun rises and the sun sets, but the sun never rises and sets. It's the earth that is rotating, but the sun is always shining. Uh, so this is like when you say the sun just set, it hasn't set. It is still shining on the other side of the moon. I mean, other side of the in other places because of the Earth planet is rotating, and uh, so sometimes there's light, and then sometimes there's darkness. But actually, the sun is always shining somewhere. It's not like the sun goes to sleep and then it wakes up. Some people think of the sun like that, but the sun is always shining. So here it says, the room is dark and the sun is far away in the sky, but the sun's reflection on the water illuminates the darkness of the room. A pure devotee can realize the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything by the reflection of his energy. In the Vishnu Purana, it is stated that as the presence of fire is understood by heat and light, so the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although one without a second, is perceived everywhere by the diffusion of his energies. It is confirmed in the Ishopanishad that the presence of the Lord is perceived everywhere by the liberated soul, just as the sunshine and the reflection can be perceived everywhere, although the sun is situated far away from the surface of the globe. Okay, so, uh, well, what is our takeaway here? There's always going to be a witness of anything we do. The the most significant witness is the Lord Himself. But there are many other witnesses. There are birds, there's bees, there's all kinds of creatures in nature. They're all witnesses of what we do. So we can never really get away with anything because there's always going to be a witness. That's why it says here, it is confirmed in the Isha Upanishad that the presence of the Lord is perceived everywhere by the liberated soul. Just as the sunshine and the reflection can be perceived everywhere, although the sun is situated far away from the surface of the globe. So, Krishna is everywhere. There's nowhere where we can say, oh, Krishna is not here, and now I can do some nonsense. No, Krishna is everywhere. And he is the ultimate knower of what's going on in the world. So that we should never think that we are alone. We should never think that we can keep a secret. We should never think that there is no witness to what we're doing. All right, any questions about that verse? The presence of the Supreme Lord can be realized just as the sun is realized first as a reflection on water, and again as a second reflection on the wall of a room, although the sun itself is situated in the sky. Yes, maybe in another hour, we will see the sun in this room.
Mm-hmm.
And although the sun is very far away uh, from the surface of the earth, but its reflection can be seen in a pot of water in the corner of a room. The room is dark and the sun is far away in the sky, but the sun's reflection on the water illuminates the darkness of the room.
One dimension that Mayavadis don't seem to accept is that the sun is still situated separately from the sky, even though his energy is everywhere. In a
Why do
way,
they not accept that?
because they don't think that Krishna is in a Goloka, there is no spiritual world separately, and we become one with the God. So in a way, they are only focused on the energy of the Lord, not on the Lord.
That's true.
I have a Mayavadi friend.
He's a friend?
And yeah, the same thing. You call Krishna, God, something. We call it energy.
Hmm.
We accept it's an energy.
Yeah.
Energy is everywhere.
Hmm.
The supreme consciousness, they call energy. They don't call anything else beyond that.
Well, that's one, let's see, aspect of the Lord.
Yeah.
So for the Mayavadis, they're more interested in the energy of the Lord instead of the Lord himself. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Duryodhana only wants Krishna's army, not Krishna.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Correct. So that's a personal choice, right? But it's not an enlightened choice. It's a partial choice of if you have Krishna in your life, you have everything. If you have somebody else in your life, you don't have everything. So it's best to have Krishna in your life. Okay. Well, we go to text 13. And it says, the self realized soul is thus reflected first in the threefold ego and then in the body, senses, and mind. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The threefold ego. Okay, what is that? The conditioned soul thinks, I am this body. But the liberated soul thinks, I am not this body. I am spirit soul. This I am is called ego, or identification of the self. I am this body, or everything in relationship to the body is mine, is called false ego. But when one is self-realized and thinks that he is an eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord, that identification is real ego. One conception is in the darkness of the threefold qualities of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. And the other is in the pure state of goodness called Suddha Sattva Vasudeva. When we say that we give up our ego, this means that we give up our false ego. But real ego is always present. When one is reflected through the material contamination of the body and mind in false identification, he is in the conditioned state. But when he is reflected in the pure state, he is called liberated. The identification of oneself with one's material possessions in the conditional stage must be purified. And one must identify him in relationship with the Supreme Lord. In the conditioned state, one accepts everything as an object of sense gratification. And in the liberated state, one accepts everything for the service of the Supreme Lord. Krishna consciousness, devotional service, is the actual liberated stage of a living entity. Otherwise, both accepting and rejecting on the material platform or in voidness or impersonalism are imperfect conditions for the pure soul. By the understanding of the pure soul, called Satya Drik, one can see everything as a reflection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A concrete example can be given in this connection. A conditioned soul sees a very beautiful rose, and he thinks that the nice aromatic flower should be used for his own sense gratification. This is one kind of vision. A liberated soul, however, sees the same flower as a reflection of the Supreme Lord. He thinks this beautiful flower is made possible by the superior energy of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, it belongs to the Supreme Lord and should be utilized in his service. These are two kinds of vision. The conditioned soul sees the flower for his own enjoyment, and the devotee sees the flower as an object to be used in the service of the Lord. In the same way, one can see the reflection of the Supreme Lord in one's own senses, mind, and body, and everything. With that correct vision, one can engage everything in the service of the Lord. It is stated in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that one who has engaged everything, his vital energy, his wealth, his intelligence, and his words, in the service of the Lord, or who desires to engage all these in the service of the Lord, no matter how he is situated, it is to be considered a liberated soul or Satya Drik. Such a man has understood things as they are. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Well, seeing things as they really are. That is what happens when we become Krishna conscious. One second. It's okay. So this is what's the purpose of hearing my Bhagavatam as we're doing. We want to learn how to see things as they really are. Now everybody's seeing, but they might not be seeing things as they really are. If they see things through the prism of their false ego, then they don't see things as they are. Like, for example, a child molester sees the child as an object of sense gratification for himself and exploits the child in that way. The mother, however, sees the same child as uh, her responsibility to protect and educate and love. So two people are seeing the same thing, the child, but they have different concepts of what the child is or what the child should be, what should be done with the child. This proves that seeing is not the most important thing. The most important thing is hearing and learning by hearing, not learning by seeing. Because people can have different concepts by seeing. However, by hearing, they can understand, hearing from the right source, they can understand what something is or what a person is, etc. So the seeing is not perfect. The hearing is the way to receive knowledge. But hearing from a bona fide devotee, not by some nonsense person. Nowadays, there are too many nonsense people in the world talking all the time on television and radio and internet and talking basically all nonsense. Okay, so here it says, by the understanding of the pure soul, called Satya Drik, one can see everything as a reflection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A concrete example can be given in this connection. A conditioned soul sees a very beautiful rose, and he thinks that the nice aromatic flower should be used for its own sense gratification. That is one kind of vision. A liberated soul, however, sees the same flower as a reflection of the Supreme Lord. He thinks this beautiful flower is made possible by the superior energy of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, it belongs to the Supreme Lord and should be utilized in his service. These two kinds of vision, and these are two kinds of vision. The conditioned soul sees the flower for his own enjoyment, and the devotee sees the flower as an object to be used in the service of the Lord. In the same way, one can see the reflection of the Supreme Lord in one's own senses, mind, and body, in everything. With that correct vision, one can engage everything in the service of the Lord. It is stated in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that one who has engaged everything, his vital energy, his wealth, his intelligence, his words, in the service of the Lord, or who desires to engage all these in the service of the Lord, no matter how he is situated, is to be considered a liberated soul or Satyadrik. Such a man has understood things as they are. This is very profound statements here by Srila Prabhupada. What is this all about? It's how to see things correctly. Everybody doesn't see things correctly. Uh, everybody doesn't see things correctly. They have a false, let's say, knowledge, and therefore they don't see correctly. Just like in school, they teach you things that are actually false. Like what? Like you only live once, and when you die, there's nothing. Well, that's false. That's not true. But yet, uh, people get that concept through so-called uh, uh, um, through so-called uh, science and philosophy, or actually I call it philosophy. There's philosophy and there's philosophy, right? So the idea that you only live once and when you die, there's nothing, that is philosophy. And when you understand that you never really die, you just simply change the body, and but your soul is eternal, but you can have different bodies. That's real knowledge. But the idea that you only live once, and when you die, there's nothing. Well, that is ignorance that leads to sense gratification because you think, well, you only live once, so I may as well try and have as much sense gratification as possible. Because when I die, it's all over. So what did kids actually learn uh, by subtle implication? That's the fact that you only live once, and then when you die, there's nothing. Therefore, the rest of my life, I should use for sense gratification. Okay, so in school, do people talk about, the teachers talk about, uh, let's see, that you have many lives. You do not have only one life, but you have many lives. Hmm. Did you ever hear that when you went to school? Huh? Did you hear that you only live once?
I didn't. They didn't talk.
Okay. Uh, well, they're not really talking much, right? What are they talking about? All mundane things.
Basic.
Well, they're not actually basic. They're subsidiary things. Basic thing is, who am I? Am I this body or am I the soul? So most people think I am this body. So they're not actually educating you correctly. the uh, uh, the concept of the soul is very important because it helps you see the difference between the body and the soul. Now, materialistic people don't see a difference between the body and the soul. Why? Because they think the body is the soul. But there is a difference between the body and the soul. The body is always changing and the soul is never changing. That's a difference. It's a big difference. And the whole idea that the body is changing and the soul never changes is the basis of spiritual life. Because if you understand the soul never changes, That means that you begin to understand the possibility of immortality. But if you only pay attention to the body, which is always changing, then you develop the concept of ephemeral life. Look that word up, ephemeral life. It means everything is subject to change. Uh, and, uh, and therefore, we should take advantage of in this life to engage as much sense gratification as possible, because everything is changing in the material world. Well, not everything changes in the material world. Krishna doesn't change. The rising of the sun and the setting of the sun doesn't change. There are a lot of things that don't change. Yes.
It means the life that is short-lived, fleeting, or temporary.
Yeah.
Yes, ephemeral, yes.
Transient, fleeting nature.
Yes. So most people believe that life is ephemeral. It's constantly uh, constantly experiencing changes going on. Like people die, houses burn, uh, there's war, then there's peace, there's floods, then there's the nice weather and things like that. So they see all these changing things. So they believe that uh, that is the nature of life. But for a devotee, the devotee sees no change. For example, uh, the, it's never that the sun will never rise. No, the sun is always going to rise, and the sun is always going to set. It's not really set, but it looks like that. But anyway, we see that there's day and there's night, and it's going on all the time. But actually, it's a little bit illusory because the sun is still shining, but it's shining somewhere else. But we think that the sun has set because the sun is rotating, but the sun is never set. So, in the same way, uh, Krishna is always present. Now, someone could say, I don't see Krishna. Well, because you're not, you haven't been hearing properly, therefore, you're not seeing properly. If you hear properly Krishna conscious philosophy, then you'll be able to see things properly. But if you don't hear Krishna conscious philosophy, then you won't see things properly. You'll see, this is mine. Actually, nothing is mine. Everything belongs to Krishna. If everything belongs to Krishna, then we should use everything in Krishna's service. But people don't see it like that. They say, oh, well, this is mine, so I'll use it just for my own pleasure. So this imperfect seeing can be corrected by hearing bona fide knowledge by bona fide devotees. But if you hear from just regular people who are still under the control of Maya, you'll never see things correctly. You'll always be taught things either halfway or no way. You see. So, like for example, and nowadays they talk about the kids who can change their uh, uh, if they're born a girl but they think they're a boy, then they can change their sex. So, therefore, there's a confusion. Like, for example, there was this one person who was a devotee. It was a long time ago, and he wanted to be a girl. So he had an operation to change his sex. And then he was always complaining that and he was writing letters to Prabhupada about that the operation was not successful. So then Prabhupada wrote back. He said, well, make up your mind. Are you this or are you that? And once you make up your mind, stick to it. Don't keep complaining, oh, the operation didn't work well, or this or that. Just decide who you are. You're a man or a woman, and then stick to it. And then finish this idea that, well, because the operation didn't work very well, I'm still in limbo, and so forth. So, and why would he say a thing like that? Because we have to decide who we are exactly. Now, if we identify with the body as this person was, you might never figure out who you are. He was born a male, but he wanted to be a female. And he had this sex change operation. But after the operation was done, he was claiming that it didn't work, it didn't do the job, it was not successful. So now he's in a state of limbo. Is he a man or is he a woman? So you see, and then Prabhupada's answer to him was, after he wrote to Prabhupada about this, Prabhupada said, make up your mind whether you're a man or a woman, and then just stick to it. So this whole effort of trying to understand who am I is experienced by everyone. And if you understand who you are, then you also understand what you're meant to be, what your work should be, what your thoughts should be, etc. But if you can't make your mind up who you are, then you're always in this, let's say, merry-go-round of trying to identify who you are. In other words, you're going around in a circle all the time. Sometimes you're a man, sometimes you're a woman, sometimes you're nothing. So this self-identification is what most people, are dealing with. Like, there are men who have children, but let's say they get into midlife, uh, a midlife crisis, and then they want to be a woman, right? So they can't figure out who they are. So instead of identifying themselves as the eternal servant of Krishna, they're still trying to figure out if they're a man or a woman. Okay. And so it's very dangerous. That's why it's very good to come to class and understand I'm the eternal servant of Krishna. That's how they should identify themselves. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman now. If you identify yourself as the eternal servant of Krishna. But if they identify themselves as a man or a woman, that's actually false identification. We're the eternal servants of the Lord. That's how we should identify ourselves, not by sex, by sex. If someone says, "Well, I am a man," Well, maybe in this life, in the next life, you could be a dog, a female dog. So the only identification that's real is I am the eternal servant of Krishna. That's real identification. Now, you might be a man or you might be a woman, but your real identification is not man or woman. Your real identification is I'm the eternal servant of Krishna. This is not taught in classes and schools. In schools, they say, well, if you think you should use the girls' toilet instead of the boys' toilet, that's okay. Because you think you look like a boy, but you think you're a girl. Well, okay, you can use the girls' bathroom. Right? Now they have these co-ed bathrooms. They can use the boys and the girls can use the same bathroom. Although that's like it puts the girls most of the time in let's say anxiety because or the woman in anxiety because all of a sudden a man comes into their toilet, right? So they have these co-ed bathrooms. Why? So that there is nobody that feels as if they are, let's say, not part of the society. So therefore, they have co-ed bathrooms to be equal to everyone. And actually, no one is equal. If someone is born blind and someone is born with eyes, how can you say everyone is equal? So, but everyone has the same potential to serve Krishna and love Krishna. But if they don't see that as their identity, then they're always going to be searching, who am I exactly? So you have these men that, they have, they're adults, they're married and they have children, and all of a sudden they decide that they're a homosexual uh, or that they're a woman. Like there was this one, I know this one man, he was like a brilliant guy, a PhD, Indian. And one day he came to class to give class dressed like a woman. And I mean, we all noticed it, we were like confused, like what's going on. And he said, I'm not a man anymore, I'm a woman. He was an Indian, he was a PhD. But he said that, I'm not a man anymore, I'm a woman. So that was like really confusing to everyone in the class. And he dressed like a woman and he talked like a woman after that. So this idea of self-identification is a big issue nowadays. There's so many different genders now. You know how many genders? There used to be two genders, man or woman. Now there's like, I don't know, 50 or 100 different types of genders.
Yeah, so 116 or something.
Yeah. Life used to be simple before. Either you're a man or you won't. Now, no. There's always these little nuances of different genders. Look that up. That's interesting. Life has become very complicated now. Trying to figure out who you are. It was not, well, either you're a man or a woman. No, now you're third or fourth or fifth or sixth or 20th identification. And therefore, and if you make a mistake people have their even in the workplace, they have their names and their genders.
Pronouns.
Pronouns, yeah, pronouns, exactly, yeah. He, she, it, nothing, I don't know, whatever. And if you give if you address them with the wrong pronoun, they can fire you. So that's a like horrible. If you make a mistake, the person can tell the boss that you don't so use the wrong pronoun, and they can fire you.
Here, here they're saying that
Huh?
there are infinite possibilities for gender.
Wow.
Beyond this list, I mean, they gave a list of about, and then they said, beyond this list, people may create items that better suit their personal experience of gender.
Wow.
Gender is fluid and can transcend established category.
Transcend.
They're also
Whoa.
talking about transcendental
Such
experience.
a big word. Yes, Abhi.
So the first two genders are male and female. Then the description is when this third one is non-binary, gender outside the male-female binary.
Well, good. That word
Gender
binary is okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
queer,
Queer.
gender queer, non-confirming gender identity, gender fluid, shifts between different genders, agender, no specific gender identity, big bigender, identifies as two genders, demi-boy, partially male identity, demi-girl, partially female identity, two-spirit, indigenous North American identity, androgyny, combination of masculine and feminine traits, neutrois, not neutral gender identity, transgender male, assigned female at birth, identifies as male, transgender female, assigned male at birth, identifies female, intersex, biological sex variation, third gender, recognized in some cultures as distinct from male, female. Hydra, recognized third gender in South Asia. Fine, so Samoan gender, third gender identity. Catholic, Thai, third gender identity. Muxay, indigenous Zapotic, third gender. And after that's the end of the table. Those are only 20, but below that it says ... which means there are a lot more.
I'm confused. Now I don't know who I am anymore. You see how convoluted life has become. You can't even figure out, what gender you are. It used to be pretty simple before, either you're a man or a woman. Now there's all these genders. Life becomes not easier, it becomes harder. And you can get fired if you use the wrong pronoun on your workplace. It's all nonsense, complete nonsense. Actually, how does a devotee, whether he is a man or a woman, identifies him or herself? I'm the eternal servant to Krishna. But now you have to go through all these different genders. Yes.
It also says personal identity. Gender is deeply personal and can vary by individual experience.
Well, you see, let's go back, 50 or 100 years. Someone is either a man or a woman. Right? Now they have all these different genders. What does binary gender mean? What does binary gender mean? They can be man or woman. What is that binary gender?
Oh, non-binary.
Binary means it's either male or female.
Or
But non-binary means it's not in true or false. It's like explicit black or white choices. Then they're falling in the spectrum from this end to that end.
Spectrum has many colors.
Yeah. So that's what they're saying. Like it's any of those other things. It's beyond binary thinking. Traditional views of gender as male or female don't encompass everyone's lived experiences. Gender fluidity challenges this binary framework by recognizing that gender can be dynamic than static.
Oh my God. Well, that's true. That is true. You could be a man in this life and a woman in the next life.
Not in the same life. But here they're saying shifting identity. A gender fluid person may feel more aligned with one gender at one time. Example, male or female, and another gender later. Example, non-binary or androgynous. These shifts might occur over days, weeks, or even within the same day.
Wow. So it's a certain hour of the day they're a man and another hour of the day they're a woman.
Like the three modes of the material nature.
Always fluctuating. You see how complicated life has become.
Actually, this is what they don't understand. I think they don't understand that the three modes of the material nature change every time, and that changes their consciousness. But then they are attributing it to gender and then making life choices.
So every time I wake up in the morning, I'm sure that I'm a man, right? But these other people, they wake up and they say, well, today I'll be a woman.
It's some of the other doctors actually identified that as a mental health situation.
Now you're talking.
Yeah, there is he speaks Robertson or something. He's a psychologist.
Yeah.
He clearly challenged all these guys, and then he said this is basically nothing but a mental health problem.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's do a little research. Do these people who are, let's say, always seeing themselves either as a man or a woman, sometimes as a man, sometimes that's called binary, right? Are they sane or insane? Is it a mental, let's say, deficiency to think like that, or is it actually real? So a lot of people say, "Well, I was born a man, but as I got older, I realized I was actually a woman." Yeah.
ChatGPT, I asked ChatGPT to list at least 100 genders. It gave all 100 genders.
Oh my God, hundreds. Confusing. There's this one PhD Indian. In Seattle, and he used to teach this course. He was a teacher, a PhD teacher, and one day he walks into the classroom dressed like a woman, and from that day on, he started to come dressed as a woman, and he identified himself not as a man, although his, let's say, his what do you call it? He still had a penis like a man, but he dressed as a woman. Now, some people will have their if there's a man, but he wants to be a woman, they'll have an operation where they cut off the penis and try and make some type of a vagina, or I don't know for sure, but it's something like that. And then later on, they realized they made a mistake. And then they want to get their penis put back on, and that's not possible. Or maybe, I don't know, they do it artificially. I don't know what they do. But there are people like that, if they're having an operation, changing their sex, then they decided they made a mistake and they want to be put back the way they were before. Why don't you look that up? See, now that does prove that gender is fluid. Well, in nature, in this life you can be a man, next life you can be a woman. So gender is actually fluid. But in the same life, if you have an operation and go from a man to a woman, and then later on you realize you've made a mistake and you want to come back to be a man, that is, I don't know if it's possible. If they cut off your genitals, I guess maybe it's possible. Do plastic surgery or something. I don't know. People get confused. They think they're a man, and then they realize I'm not a man, I'm a woman, and they get their genitals cut off, whatever. And then later on, they realize, oh, I made a mistake. They want to go back to be a man. You see how Krishna consciousness is very nice, because you are not fluctuating. I was born a man, and okay, or a male, and I'll continue throughout this life as a male, but my real identity is not male or female. My real identity is I'm the eternal servant of Krishna. So now you no longer have this, let's say, a confusion about who I am.
How Maharaj scripture gives the full clarity
Yeah.
that don't do the false identification based on the body.
Okay, what are you looking up, Bobby?
It says that first of all, the surgery is very hard to complete, and it is typically possible. It is typically not possible in the same way a person was before transiting. So it's saying that before, once you're a normal person, after you take the surgery, it's typically not possible for you to fit the same way you were before.
Yeah, that's a fact. That is definitely a fact. Well, we should be satisfied with what, let's say, what plumbing Krishna gave us, and stick with it. Not try and change the plumbing from man to woman or woman to man, all that junk.
Maharaj, Trump pledged to roll back the protection for transgender students. So,
Which means what?
I think Trump pledged to impose wide-ranging restrictions and roll back civil rights protections for transgender students. And his administration can swiftly start work on one major change. It can exclude transgender students from some Title IX protections, which affect school policies on students' use of pronouns, bathrooms, and locker rooms.
Oh, now we're going back to sanity.
He's imposing
Instead of an insanity,
Yeah.
My God. So let's see if it works.
Yeah.
I hope.
It will be a Very good change.
Yeah.
Very positive.
Vote Trump. Hare Bo, thank you very much. Oh, glory to Srila Prabhupada. And be sure you're a man, or be sure you're a woman, but don't keep changing.
Hare Krishna, any other questions or comments before we wrap up? Okay, so we'll call it.
Oh, glory to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Hare Krishna Maha Mantra ki jai.
Today is also the disappearance day of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur.
Oh, okay.
So we have fasting till noon.
Good. Good. I will put
And
on.
then in the evening, we have a program in the temple. We will be going to.
Okay. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Huh?
Yes.
It's his disappearance day.
Yes.
Okay.
Very cool. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
So there's fasting until noon.
Yes.